we're going to start today to talk about what? About Play-Doh, whether you could use Play-Doh at Chavas. I was going to bring some also, but we didn't. Okay, so a lot of our technical information about Play-Doh comes from, Play-Doh was invented in the 1960s, and they have patents for it. Again, the patent is available. The main patent that there is whatever it was from the 60s, and it has a lot of details in it. So our those kind of details are going to come from there. Okay, you make Play-Doh out of 4 ingredients, and sometimes 2 other ones. The 4 ingredients are flour, water, salt, kerosene, and sometimes it has borax, which is like a cleanser, and aluminum sulfate. Okay, and the recipes there give you. They have 22 recipes of how you can make it. The point being, when you're writing a patent, you want to write how you could do it. You don't want to tell them the truth. You just want to, give ideas of, you have to give a certain amount of information. You give 22 possible recipes of how to do it, with all different percentages of these different ingredients. And they tell you what each one of them is for and how they make it. Okay, so what do we care? What are we talking about? What the Shai was talking about is that there's an Isser of Bal Yirah to Chametz Pesach, and there's an Isser Hanan to have from Chametz. So the Shai is whether Play-Doh, which is made out of flour and water, right, those are the 2 main ingredients. In all the recipes, it's between 30 and 57% flour and water. Each one of them. What? Well, we don't think really about the Isra Achila, but the
flour and the water.
No, each one of them is between 30 and 57%.
Each one?
Each one is between 30 and 50. No, how can they both be? LMI, when one is 57, the other one is not 57. Usually they're the same. Usually they're in the 40s. Usually
at least 60%.
What? It's flour and water. That's what it is. It's flour and water. It has a good amount of salt in it. Good amount. Like it ranges from 1 to 25%, but it's usually on the higher end of that. A little bit of kerosene and a little bit of the other ingredients. Okay? So the child is it Bal Yirah and is it Isra? No. Okay, so
the kerosene is an integral ingredient, or just to make it mei'achilah?
Okay, so they don't write that the kerosene is there to make it not edible. I mean, it is. You should know.
Why not?
No.
They want to see it. This is they buy more.
It's non-toxic. It's non-toxic. It's sold as being non-toxic. That's part of what it is. So the kerosene is, they said, is because they believe that kerosene coats the molecules and makes them velvety and pliable and not sticky. That's what they think what it's there for. Okay, I don't know what they were thinking about, or that I remember reading anything about that making that edible. That's what they think kerosene is there. Okay.
What makes it not spoil?
We'll get to that. Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay.
Some inhibitor.
The borax helps keep it from rotting. Well, sure. It does. We'll talk more about that in a second. Okay. So the we all know that there's a din that says that the Torah says when you have an avela, you should give it to a ger, means to someone who's not Jewish who can eat treif. So we learn from there that the only time food is also is when it's roy to give it to a ger.
Before we get to that, how do you know it's chametz?
How do I know
it's chametz? Who said that the avela was machmetz?
Come to it.
No, you're talking about the dust outside of the
so,
already. I want to know if it's bechad issa.
Okay, but well, if you mix flour and water together, you let it sit for 18 minutes.
No, but if they put it together, and the kerosene at the same time, which is maybe to preservatives, so, it takes away the fat.
In Mirchus, I'm going to talk about it. It's probably not going to be this. It's probably going to be next time. But I do have plans to talk about it. Okay, so we learn from there that something is only usher if it's royal achila. If it's not royal achila, then it's mutter. The isurim that are on the food don't apply if it's not royal achila. But something is chametz. The Gemara says you have to have a higher amount, not for all chametz. Chametz, which is royal chamei b'isas acheres. Chametz, which you could use to the Torah's example that is sourdough, that you could use it to help another dough ferment. That's considered royal achila until it's considered usher until it's Nifsal mei'achilah kalav. Okay, to a higher standard that has to be before it becomes royal achila, and it doesn't apply to all chametz. But the chametz is royal chamei b'isas acheres. Okay, so when we first look at the chametz, and our first approach to it would be that it's not royal achila, and seemingly not even royal achila's kalav. Okay, we tried it. We didn't do a really scientific study, but all the people who tasted it told us that it was not royal achila. Who tried it? Now, other people told us. Come on,
kids eat it all the time.
Kids eat it all the time. Okay, so that was one group of people. Did you ever try it?
No.
Okay, so if you tried it, you would say.
He said all the other days.
We tried a bunch of people. We gave it to a bunch of people to take.
Make it try.
Oh, you can actually try people.
Yeah, David did. Said, "Here, take a bite of it." Myself included.
Intellectually, they decided it wasn't good. Kids eat it all the time. It can't be that bad.
Well, intellectually, decided no. They took a bite out of
You
it.
know what I'm saying? Kids eat it.
Listen to me.
Well, how do you consider?
Okay, there are
You take a second bite. You take a second bite.
They eat it all the time.
there are kids who nibble on it. That's true. We heard that. We gave it to people, to anybody mature, spit that immediately, and we gave it to a dog also. We gave
Spit it out?
Did you ever try it?
No.
Okay, so go home and try it. And you'll tell me what you think. And then we gave it to a dog also, your neighbor. We gave it to a dog also, and he didn't touch it.
Which companies?
I don't remember.
Use the original Play-Doh with like some imitation, cheap imitation?
No, the real stuff. We used the real stuff. Okay, and they spit it out. I don't know why we're so surprised. I mean, the stuff has got 20% salt and a few percent kerosene in it. You don't. If you would think about it, you would imagine it doesn't taste so good. You know? But
He said the dog spit it out.
they wouldn't touch it. He looked at. He ran closer. No. He wouldn't even touch it. Okay. So
You use the wrong colors.
Yeah, you got
purple.
to put it on top of dog food.
I think we did. I think we tried it with Nifsal. I don't remember that. That I don't remember. And even also, you have to think about is that the only time we say that something has to be Nifsal Mechilas Kelev is only, as I said to you, when it's Royal Chamei Be'isas Acheres. Poskim say if it's something that's not Royal Chamei Be'isas Acheres, it just has to be Nifsal Mechilas Adam. So therefore, this stuff, which itself has not even become chametz. We're going to talk about that probably next time. Maybe hasn't even become chametz. It's for sure not royal chamei be'isas acheres. So it only has to be nifsal mechilas adam. It doesn't have to be nifsal mechilas kel. So at our first glance, just looking at it, we would say, "No, what's wrong with the thing?" Okay, we're assuming for today that it became chametz, but big deal. It's not royal mechilas, so it should be mutter. Okay, so what we're going to talk about is a well-known shita, at least for Kashrus people, of the Chavas Da'as, and see how that fits in and whether it makes sense, what the Chavas Da'as is talking about, and then how that fits into this thing. Okay? The Chavas Da'as asks some questions. Okay? There's questions like this. The Gemara says that it's only usher to eat food k'derech achilah. Midaraisa, there's no issur to eat food shlo k'derech achilah. So, for example, if a person eats, one of the Gemara's examples is, if a person eats black pepper straight, okay, a person eats vinegar straight, okay, it's considered shloki derech achilah. It's not usher. Okay, there's no issur deraisa. There's an issur drabanan, but there's no issur deraisa to eat it straight. Now, vinegar is a food. Okay, it's a food item, so it's black pepper, and I think the Gemara has another example of oil, like vegetable oil. But if you eat them straight, shloki derech achilah, people don't eat it that way. Okay, so fleck the Chavas Da'as. Once there's an issur, once we say that midaraisa there's nothing wrong with eating food shloki derech achilah, so then, if I have a food that's nifsal mei'achilah, why do we need an extra pasuk to tell you that nifsal mei'achilah is mutter? Every nifsal mei'achilah is also shloki derech achilah. If I have a spoiled piece of meat, and I eat it, so why does it have to be mutter? Because it's nifsal mei'achilah, it's mutter anyhow, because it's shloki derech achilah. Anybody who's eating it, it's automatically shloki derech achilah because it's not edible anymore. When it's not edible, by its nature means that it's shloki derech achilah. Obviously, I'm eating shloki derech because people don't eat spoiled food. So
why does the Torah have to give two things?
That's the question. Why are we in two psukim for? He says once the Torah told that shloki derech is mutter, so then I'm saying shloki derech is mutter, so then every nefesh mei'achilah is automatically shloki derech achilah. It's sort of like built into it. It's going to be automatic that if it's not edible, then I'm not eating it in the normal way because people don't eat spoiled food. It's sort of built in. Okay, so he says that when the Torah does those two psukim is to tell you that there's two different ways to make the food mutter. When the food is nifsal mei'achilah, then the issur on the food is completely falls off, and the food is not usher anymore. When a food is shloki derech achilah, the food itself is usher. The food remains usher, but if I eat it, I'm not over an issur for eating that food. Okay, one's an issur gavra nechefsi. Call it how you like to. One is saying that the food is not usher anymore, and one is saying the food is still usher. But my eating it...
If I reconstitute this neved or mix it in a way that's sufficiently becomes mei'achilah, it will remain mutter.
What? It would remain mutter. Yeah. So I have a few nafkaminas between the two parts. He doesn't say every one of these things. A couple of nafkaminas. Okay. First is he says this is his nafkamina. He says, what happens if I take the food that's nifsal mei'achilah and I pour sorry, if I take the food that, okay, I made a mistake. I'm trying, I can't read my wrote because it's a mistake. If a person takes the food that's Nifsal mei'achilah, person takes food that's Nifsal mei'achilah, and then he goes ahead and he puts things onto it that make it that he can get it down. Okay, he manages to decorate it with spices and flavors and all kinds of things he do to help him get it down. Not over Nisr. It's not over Nisr because the food is not usher anymore. So the fact that I dressed it up in a way that I can get it down doesn't make a difference. The food is not usher anymore. What is if I took a food that was like derech hakilah? Okay, let's say I took a food, an example of food that's like derech hakilah, it's a food that's raw. Okay, so food that you have to eat cooked, and I eat it raw. And I eat it raw in a way that I can get it down. Okay, I find a way to make it, acceptable to eat it without cooking it, so then you're over on it. Okay, it's only a heter if I'm doing this like derech hakilah. The food be'etzem is usher. It's what? No, it's not but I did it in a way that I managed to make it edible. I put enough.
And other people would eat like that?
Yeah, and everybody else would eat it also. I made it in a way that now, without cooking, I still made it edible. I cut it into small pieces. I put spices onto it. I did something that made it that I can get, that people would consider edible. Then you're right from it. Okay. Something that's only considered Nifsal mei'achilah if what I did to the thing can't be undone. Okay, it's only Nifsal mei'achilah if what happened to make it Nifsal is something that I can't undo. If it's something that I can easily undo, then that's not considered Nifsal mei'achilah. Nifsal mei'achilah means it's like hopelessly cross the line that reasonably can't be brought back to where it was, and that's considered Nifsal mei'achilah. But Shlak derech hakilah doesn't have such a rule. For example, if I have food that's boiling hot, okay, it's boiling, it's 200 degrees, it's boiling hot that I can't eat it, if I would eat it like that, it's Shlak derech hakilah. Okay, you wouldn't be over on it. But everything that's boiling hot, if you wait 10 minutes, it's not going to be boiling hot anymore. Let it just sit there. Of course, it's reversible. In a second, it's going to go back. It's going to undo itself very quickly. It'll just cool down. Okay, so it's Shlak derech hakilah is only, even if it's reversible, it could be Shlak derech hakilah. Because it's at the time that I ate it, was it Shlak derech hakilah? Yeah. I don't care if it could be undone and change it. Okay.
So because they mix chilukim, then you need both.
Yeah, so I'm explaining to you what he says the chiluk is one becomes completely mutter, and one is just a heter while you eat it, and hence these nafkamina too. Okay, the nafkamina that has most to do with us is whether you're ever bayirah for the food. Okay, if I have a food that's Nifsal mei'achilah, there's no bayirah. Okay, if it's enough, not inedible, there's no Isser bayirah, there's no Isser hanan on the food. But if I have a food that's like derech hakilah, then of course I'm from bayirah. Okay, I have a food that's just, if I would eat it like this, it would be like derech hakilah, so eating it right now in its Shlak derech hakilah form, you wouldn't be over if you ate like that. Okay, but it has nothing to do with bayirah. The food itself is isser. The food itself is isser. So if it's isser, I'm over bayirah for eating. I'm over you for keeping it. Because bayirah means don't keep things that are usher as chametz. And this is usher as chametz. The fact that if I would eat it this second, I wouldn't be over. That's like a thing to do with me. It has nothing to do with the food. The food is still chametz, and therefore I'd be over bayirah for that.
So, and if it's nifgam, then what?
If it's Nifsal mei'achilah, there's no bayirah then. It's not Israel anymore, it's not chametz anymore. No, if it's not chametz, why shouldn't I keep it? But it's just a kedera. I mean, it's just in a form that had I eaten it right now, I wouldn't be over. So I'm not over. I have nothing to do with it. The food is still chametz anymore.
He says that it's still to the chametz, or that's
He doesn't say the part chametz. No, others say like that. Same kind of way. Others say the same thing. Yeah, the Chavas Da'as at the end maybe brings, I don't remember, at the very end it could be he brings in the chametz, but others bring it for the thing. There's enough community between them. It's not, the food is not hester. The food is just, when I eat it I wouldn't be over nisr, but the food itself remains also. So I'm over bayirah. And if it's Nifsal mei'achilah, then I'm for sure not over bayirah. Okay, sit down. But then, so this part, so far that I said, that the Chavas Da'as says is pretty Muslim. That this is such an afkamina.
The halacha, I mean, unless by Pesach, if it happens on Pesach, it remains also.
That's special because it happened on Pesach. That's a special thing because it happened on Pesach. If it happened before Pesach, then it's mutter. Hapas asked for she'ifsha. Right here. Chum mitzvah twenty man is surah. Whatever it is, then you should keep it. The mutter kind of Pesach. Okay, if it happens on Pesach, this.
That's not the regular don't get like or is that the chametz?
No, the regular dinner. Look, now, sometimes chametz has a higher level that has to get Nifsal mei'achilah kelos. But whenever it crosses the right line, it became sufficiently inedible, then the dinner is it's mutter to keep it. There's no bayirah. Okay, so now, everybody so far, what I said so far is, everyone's pretty much masking to this. But then, the Chavas Da'as says something that we struggle with. That's what I'm here to try to explain. And that is, he describes Nifsal mei'achilah and Shlak derech hakilah in a way that it's very, I don't know what to say. When you look at it, you don't get it at first. What is he trying to say? Okay. Okay, which is to say this. He says, when he says something that's Nifsal mei'achilah, he says, such as if the food was spoiled. Nisrach gufa iser. The food spoiled. That's the example of Nifsal mei'achilah. And when he describes the other side of Shloik Derech Achilah, he gives a few examples. But among the one that contrasts to Nisrach gufa iser is when he calls it Ira b'seichel davar mar. Okay, if you Ira b'seichel davar mar, that's Shloik Derech Achilah. And if you Nisrach gufa iser, that's Nifsal mei'achilah. As if those are opposites, and they are different from each other. But what's hard to understand is, well, that's not the criteria. Whether it's spoiled by itself, or you added something bad tasting into it, that shouldn't be what it depends on. Well, to become Nifsal mei'achilah, it has to become so terribly inedible that it's hopeless and it's never going to get back again. That's Nifsal mei'achilah. Well, that could happen if you eat b'seichel davar mar also. And the other side becomes Shloik Derech. It could spoil to that point also. Well, why is it? It doesn't seem like the criteria should be whether it was nisrach or was ir b'seichel davar mar. It should depend on how inedible it became, or how reversible it is, or whatever it should depend on, but not whether you depend. And if I take a cup of stam yain, okay, and I pour gasoline into it, okay, so I was ir b'seichel davar mar, and it's never going to be fixed again. So shouldn't that be considered Nifsal mei'achilah? Why should I put enough gasoline into it? It's going to be completely Nifsal mei'achilah. What do I care? Why is the criteria whether it's nisrach or ir b'seichel davar mar? It should depend on how bad it is or how reversible it is. That's what it should depend. So it could be.
They're common examples.
Right. So it could be. You're right. It could be. He's just giving an example. It could be this is one example, this is another example, but that's not really the ikar. Okay? And you could say that. I don't think that if you read it, when you keep reading, he keeps talking examples like that. He keeps saying this on this side, this on this side. It doesn't sound like it's an example. Okay? You might be right, and if you're right, then you can go, whatever. It's not. No, really, it's not. There won't be something again with the Chavas Da'as. It just happened to be giving examples. Doesn't sound like that. The Biur Halacha also says something that sounds very much like the Chavas Da'as. The Biur Halacha, there's a bracketed comment. I'm assuming he wrote it himself. He says, "The have kedavar chametz sheshafcha b'soicha davar charif b'yoser ve'en yochel lecha machmas charifusay da'avur zeh lo yivat mimenu sheim oichel." Sounds very similar to what we're saying from the Chavas Da'as. You could read that otherwise also, but it sounds like you're saying is, just because you stuck something in that makes it taste so awful, and it's not royal achila anymore, that doesn't make it not food anymore. So, what does it have to do with it? Shouldn't it depend on how much you put in, or how bad it tastes?
What is the halacha?
Halacha tes. Okay, halacha tes. So, it's in a bracket, it's in the middle of the piece. So, however, that shouldn't be what it depends on. Okay, so people have set answers. There are people who try to be mei'achilah, and the people who say, like Yossi, that says, he doesn't mean it. It's just an example.
Well, what food item are you going to put in that's so hard that's considered?
I told you. If you put gasoline,
I said food item. What food item?
What's the difference with a food item? Ir b'seichel davar mar. You think ir b'seichel davar mar? He means is you put in a food item into it. Okay. Okay. So we'll have to think of the right food item that you can put into it that will make it so inedible. Pepper. Okay. I'm not.
It will make it. It'll make it. It'll make it in a royal achila.
Yeah, I mean, let's say royal achila. Let's say we put a cup of black pepper into 2 cups of grape juice. It's not royal achila. It's going to be. It's not like that. It's totally.
You could keep adding grape juice and make it.
Okay, so what I'm saying?
Royal achila. What? Where's not royal achila?
There's a certain black pepper.
Black pepper is royal achila.
No. At that level, it's not royal achila.
Black pepper powder is in royal achila. Of course it is.
It's royal achila. It's just like an achila.
That's all. But any food, by definition, is going to be royal achila. Any royal achila food that you put in, even the high concentrations, it might not make sure that
So I'm going to tell you what I think is the pshat, and then maybe that's what you mean. Okay, you'll think maybe that's what you mean. Okay, and then he was already hinting at it. That's why I think the pshat is like this: when you take a food and you put into it a davar mar, okay, it seems to me that when you put in the davar mar into a food, you are by nature, that thing is reversible. It's sort of automatically reversible what I did. Why is it reversible? Because as much davar mar that I put in, it only became not royal achila because it was some kind of a percentage. At a certain percentage, at a certain cutoff, it said, oh my gosh, it's so awful that now you can't eat it anymore. It was a certain amount. If I put in less than that, it wouldn't have been Nifsal mei'achilah, whatever the number would be. Well, I always have an option. I could just put in more hector into it. Okay, so for example, if I took grape juice and I put gasoline into the grape juice, So if I just added in more grape juice into the pot, then what would happen is eventually the gasoline would be diluted to such a point that it wouldn't be Nifsal mei'achilah. So it's reversible because by its nature, if I added something into it, all I have to do is add more heter, and now the dilution will come through a different way. The dilution will change to the point that it won't be Nifsal mei'achilah. So the only way to make a food really Nifsal mei'achilah is for it to spoil. If it spoils, if it rots, to the point that it's inherently heter, and then I could dilute that also. But that's mamash like, think of my example of that is, if you take a piece of moldy bread, you have a piece of moldy bread, and it's not royal mei'achilah. Chametz pash ifshal. The bread is moldy, and you go and you drown it in ketchup. Could you get it down? You probably could get it down. I mean, if you do enough to dilute it, but no one thinks that you made the chametz back edible. Of course not. You just managed to get it down your throat, but you didn't make it edible. As opposed to here, if you add enough heter into it, then you just diluted the davar mar to the point. The davar mar has been diluted to the point that it's not davar mar anymore. It doesn't have any effect on it.
The gasoline becomes edible?
No, but the gasoline is not the answer. That's not the answer. The answer was the grape juice was stam yain. So he said, I irrib by davar mar into the thing. No, the davar mar. Imagine if I just put one drop of gasoline. It wasn't irrib by davar mar. So I have to do the same thing. I can undo it by just adding enough to the point that it's that ratio. Which has a big nafkamina for us. The nafkamina for us, if I'm right, the nafkamina is, I told you that the recipes, the lowest amount of kerosene in Play-Doh is 0.5%. So let's pretend. We're making up a number. That's true. That's 0.5%. And let's pretend that it's the kerosene that makes it not royal mei'achilah. That may or may not be true. Let's say it's the kerosene that makes it. So we're going to imagine that at 0.1%, the kerosene would not make it royal mei'achilah. So that means that I put in 0.5% and I have a pound of Play-Doh, it's not royal mei'achilah. What happens if I add in another 4 pounds of flour? Right? Add another 4 pounds of flour. All of a sudden, my 0.5% of kerosene became 0.1% of kerosene. Now I went from being 0.5% that's not royal mei'achilah to 0.1% that we're pretending is royal mei'achilah. We're just making up numbers. Now it's royal mei'achilah. So guess what? I just took out the kerosene. I reversed the irba davar mar. I managed to get it without doing anything very sophisticated. Well, I just did it. Add more heter to the food, or more insight, more whatever to the thing, and I undid my dilution that I had. So, that's what he means. The irba davar mar, by its nature, like this is what you were sort of saying before about food. By a food item, we have to just reorganize it, and all of a sudden it becomes usable. If I put black pepper into my sugar, you say, my gosh, black pepper would ruin sugar. You can't eat anymore. That's not true. If you use it in the right way, then black pepper and sugar, you make, salad dressing, so maybe that does fit in. You're spicing your toast, and black pepper and sugar is not a problem. In other words, with food items, it's only not edible because of the ratio of one to the other. So I could reformulate it, and all of a sudden, the ratio is not negated. Now, that's it. Even if I'm right about that, there's some Kashrus on the Chavas Da'as. And those are, if you look in Hilchos Pesach, in Tafman Beis, there's a number of examples of foods that are considered not royal mei'achilah, that if you look at them, they're foods that are irba davar mar. That's what the examples are. They're not royal mei'achilah, and they're cases of irba davar mar. Two that I'll tell you are, one is arevas hafdanim. You make a tanning solution, and the tanning solution has flour inside of it. So we say it's not royal mei'achilah. Well, the flour that you put into it was royal mei'achilah. It's only not royal mei'achilah because you mix it into this other chazarai. And the other example is ink. The oil that you write with that has beer inside of it, for whatever reason, they still beer into the ink. It's also considered not royal mei'achilah, and you're allowed to use that ink on Pesach because the ink that's inside of there, the beer that's inside of there is not royal mei'achilah. Well, isn't that also irba davar mar? Well, the beer was fine. The beer tasted just fine when you started. So how come the ink is mutter to use on Pesach? And it happens to be in that case is you don't have to worry that the guys who are writing would lick their pens to get them to write better. Say, Mama's getting the ink into their mouth. Don't worry about it. It's not a problem. Wait a second. But the beer was royal mei'achilah. It's only not royal mei'achilah because you're mixing something else into it. So what's the reason why it's okay? So it seems to me here also another conjecture, my thought, and that is like this. There's a nafkamina between Chavas Da'as' case of irv boy davar mar, where the etzem you had iser, to which you added a certain amount of davar mar into it, and those cases where it's the opposite way. In those cases, the ikar of the thing that you have in front of you is the davar mar. The ikar of the thing that you have in front of you is the thing that's not royal achila. The rebbe's have done them, or the ink, and some of the other examples here, I think that be'etim they're not royal achila. To which you added a small amount of isser to it. So I added a small amount of isser to the large amount of davar mar. So to speak, Roy will tell us that this food is not royal achila. It's like the food spoiled. The food be'etim is, the food itself is not royal achila. And it happens to have a part of it that's chametz. No, so the ikar is not royal achila. With a little bit of chametz in it, then it's mutter. Ir b'davar mar means the ikar is the isser. And I add into the ikar, which is isser, I add a little bit of davar mar. Then I say, this food is be'etim isser. I has a little bit of an off taste. No, I can reverse that off taste by diluting it to minos.
Alright, so you're saying a regular food, if you put in something that makes it totally not edible, it's 10% of the thing, and it's not royal achila at all. It's still usher because I can add more heter and it'll make it back royal achila.
So it happens to be allowed to eat it. Punkt. I'm going to punkt because it'll be shloki derech achila. But right, it'll be considered to be usher. Now I want to take the.
It's not royal achila.
So now, stop. So what you're pointing at is something I was about to say, which is all that I'm saying is what the Chavas Da'as says. Okay? I don't think that. No. What I mean is, not everybody agrees to the Chavas Da'as. Most people assume, not like the Chavas Da'as. They assume it's, look at Tafman Beis, you see all these cases of Ir B'Davar Mar, that is usher, and they assume if you mix in something isser, it could just as well become not royal achila. I'm looking within this Chavas Da'as to explain it, and what the real Halacha seems to be saying like that, but I don't think that at all everyone agrees to that. This is just his shita of what he's saying. Most people look at it, they see all these dinim of you can mix it in, not royal achila, not royal achila. What do I care how it became not royal achila? He was the one who said the first part that he said that there's an option between not royal achila and shloki achila. I think everybody agrees to that. But the second part, that the criteria is were you ir b'davar mar or was it nisrach? I'm not convinced everybody agrees to that. No, the Chavas Da'as says that. I'm just saying that. Now, but what's going to come out according to the Chavas Da'as is an afternoon for us, because in our case, the Play-Doh, okay, is not a little bit of isser with a lot of davar mar. It's the other way around. The ikar of the food is flour and water. That's what it is. It's dough. Okay, and they added other things to make it not spoil, to make it pliable and velvety, all kinds of other criteria that they're looking for. But the etzem, the stuff is dough. Okay, so if we're right that the Chavas Da'as holds, that if you ir b'davar mar, that doesn't make Nifsal mei'achilah. In cases when the ikar is isser and there's a little bit of davar mar mixed into it, then the Play-Doh, according to the Chavas Da'as, is not going to be much. Okay? That's going to come out, as I just said a second ago. That's only according to the Chavas Da'as. I'm not convinced everybody says agree to that, but according to the Chavas Da'as, you have a problem. Okay, so I have to throw in one other thing.
How do you argue? Which one?
This indicates that the criteria is ir b'davar mar versus not royal achila versus nisrach. That's not so partial. Okay, most people assume that you can ir b'davar mar and it's still not royal achila, because and what it depends on is so now the two things that we have to throw in that are not directly to what we have to do, and that's like this. First of all, according to what I'm saying to you, according to this way of understanding the Chavas Da'as would have another chumrah about something that we all think about, which is eating pills on Pesach. If I eat a pill, now a pill can have many places where there could be chametz into it, but I'm only focusing on what happens if the starch that holds it together is chametz. Okay, now the starch in the pill is the main constituent of the pill. I mean, it's the bulk of the pill is some kind of a body that holds the whole thing together. The medicine that's in there is a tiny speck. The ikar is something that's making the pill hold together. Now the truth is, okay, I'll tell you the truth in a second. So if you're concerned that starch would be chametz, then we tell people you can eat any pill you want to because it's not royal achila. Try biting into a pill. You'll find out how not royal achila it is. Okay, but the pill is only not royal achila because of all the davar mar that you added into it. Okay, all the other stuff that got added into it that makes it taste awful. But the pill itself is a shloki derech achila. No, shloki derech achila. I don't know whether you could take it on Pesach. That's one child. But could you own it on Pesach? You ever buy your raw for owning it on Pesach? It's a different child. Forget about if you could take it. You're taking it would only be shloki derech achila, which is only less midrabanan. So Chachamim could do that also. But could you own it on Pesach? It would come out according to that. You wouldn't be allowed to own it on Pesach. Okay. The only thing is, just keep in mind, balance that with the fact that, first of all, everybody who says the price can mention that you can eat pills on Pesach, and Chazanish, other people who say that you're allowed to take pills on Pesach, even though the starch is chametz, are saying not in the Chavas Da'as. Say it that way, you know what I mean? Say not in the Chavas Da'as. But also is that the starch is not chametz, it's really kidneys, or even less. One of the main ways that they hold pills together is something called if I remember the name, sodium starch glycinate, if I remember, which is a potato product. Okay, for some reason it comes from potatoes. That helps pills get swallowed and then explode when they get into your stomach. Okay, like, break apart well in your stomach. But theoretically, if it would be chametz, then according to him, you'd have a shayla. The second thing is, the second nafkamina for us, the second possible nafkamina for us, which is not a Pesach shayla, is people talk about the Chavas Da'as when you talk about putting pegim into a boiler. I put pegim into a boiler, and I say the water in the boiler at some point is Nifsal mei'achilah. But then, if you wait around, that davar mar that I add into it makes it not mei'achilah. Excuse me. So now we have to just think about where does that put us? The davar mar went into the water that was usher. Well, according to the Chavas Da'as, all I did was eruv by davar mar. I didn't spoil the water. I only was eruv by davar mar. So maybe that should say that's not making it nifsal mei'achilah. Okay, maybe that's not making nifsal mei'achilah automatically because it's just being eruv by davar mar, just making shloka derech achilah. Okay. On the other hand, the water is really not the isser. Okay, the water is the isser is a tam that's in the water. The water be'etzem is heter. So not really to say that it's being mixed into eruv by davar mar. It's really like equal proportions of it's heter with a little bit of isser tam and a little bit of heter tam being mixed together. So
the water is royal achilah.
The water is royal achilah. Right, the isser is just the tam that's in there, and as compared to that, the double plugging that into it and the tam are equal, so to speak. They're not, one is not more thicker than the other, so they're not eruv by davar mar. It's like
no, but what is that like davar mar? Because the water is royal achilah.
The water is.
But this thing is still royal achilah.
But the water is not usher. The water is not usher. All that's usher is the thing that's floating around in the water. The tam that's in the water.
Fine. But this thing did not become nifsal mei'achilah. This thing is royal achilah. It's water, right?
The water didn't become nifsal mei'achilah because it was just eruv by davar mar. Right. But I'm saying to you is that. But if the roy was davar mar, then I said you don't have to agree with me. And I had said was if the ikar is davar mar, then the little bit of isser that's in there is okay. That's not eruv by davar mar. So that's sort of what's going on over here. We have the water that's neutral. We have tam of isser, tam of davar mar.
I say the water is neutral. What about you? What the isser is? What about you? What the isser is? This thing did not become ein royal achilah from the Chavas Da'as. Water is food. It did not become ein royal achilah.
Okay. You could say that. I can take that. There's another.
That has a belief in it. You got food with a belief in it.
Okay. There's another thing that's totally from a different angle, which has nothing to do with the Chavas Da'as part of it, which is that we're the davar mar. There's two sides to that. The davar mar over here is really reversible because what happens is that as soon as the water goes through the boiler, all the davar plug-in dissipates. Okay, it doesn't pass through in the next stage. So even though boilers are a very sophisticated piece of equipment, and we wouldn't usually say it's reversible because I could stick it into a boiler and boil it up and distill out the tam out the other way, but that would all theoretical in your house. But when you're working in a steam system, it's very part of the whole chiluk of the plate is that the tam of gam is going to be taken out. So come on guys, it's not reversible, of course it's reversible, and wait 10 minutes it's going to be out. It's part of the whole system. It's not like I'm in my house and I have to go buy a distillation column. It's part of the system that is going to be put out. Okay, and the opposite to that, the contrast to that is that we have to now imagine no one's ever found a davar plug-in, basically, that can go through into the steam, because in the boiler it all dissipates. Okay, but we're being chayshish that the tam of isser that's in there, which no one's ever tasted, the tam of isser that we imagine is in there, it can go through. Every chemical that we throw into the boiler doesn't get through to the steam. But somehow magically, the tam of isser that no one tastes, that tam does get through. So there's a tzad to say it's different.
Because tam is part of the water.
Yeah.
The chemicals are not part of the water.
Why is it part of the water and more than the chemicals are?
The chemicals are different. It's a tam. There's no more washes to it. It's a taste. They absorb taste.
Are you saying?
I do see tam is no washes.
Okay, in other words, no.
There's no washes to the thing in there. Zero washes to the thing in there.
No.
David is very water.
David is looking at it non-scientifically. And he's saying, look, the plug-in I poured in, there was a cup of something that I poured in, that was an extra thing. And the tam is this magical thing that Chazal knew about, that passed through magically that no one ever saw. Okay, but Yossi saying is, come on, who are we kidding? We know that the tam comes from some molecules, the chayes is piercing through. So, but we should think that this magic, that only that thing doesn't get out in the boiler. But this thing that we actually never even saw, but this thing that comes in here, somehow that passes through. So that's a reason to say is, it's good enough to be plugging in the water, wherever if the town of Khan goes, okay, but that's really off topic from what we had. Okay, anyhow.
So the chemicals also have a time of the chemicals that I didn't know, that the harsh stuff is in the water, the chemical in the water here. So why doesn't that go through?
Maybe it does. Maybe it does. It's right.
But no, right.
So no, it does. As much as the time goes through, it goes through. So Baruch Hashem. So we're okay. Anyhow, this is our first tzad. Why the Play-Doh should not be mother? Maybe it's some mei'achilah. I'm mentioning the next time two other possibilities that will also branch into other stuff. Why it might be mother.